Hey everybody, what's happening? Welcome to Let's Play Majerus G3 Episode 4, Software Environment. Today we have a very, very special episode and a special guest, Dragan Espenschied. And of course, this is the web series where we're taking a look at the recently restored laptop and virtual studio of late contemporary artist Michel Majerus. And Dragan was the person who got this device running again through various mystic and magical transformations. No, that's not right, the word. I don't know what the right word is, Dragan, but that we will be discussing today. Normally, I do housekeeping at the beginning of every episode, but since we have a guest, it doesn't make sense to vacuum. So I'll do that in the next episode. Although we'll talk about if it does look a little pixely, a little blurry today. We have been struggling for hours to get this stream to work. So just bear with the resolution. And maybe actually today we might even come to the conclusion that there is no such thing as resolution. Okay, Dragan. Dragan, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me on your YouTube series, Corey. I've been a big fan.
Oh, well, you're also part of it. So I'm a fan also. And actually, we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later in the episode, how I first found out about Dragan. So, Dragan, tell us a bit about your position with Rhizome. Rhizome is one of the partners on this project, along with the Majerus Estate for those at home. And real quick, as I say in every episode, please go back to episode 1, which will give you a real primer on what this project is all about. So, Dragan, again, tell us about Rhizome, what you do.
Yeah, so Rhizome is a new media arts organization that was founded in 1996 by the artist Mark Tribe, originally as a mailing list. And I think the idea back in the time was like to gather and champion this, like people who are active in that field that hadn't been established at all by that time, and present themselves as a new movement of art and something that has to be taken seriously, really. So in 1999, Rhizome released the Art Base, which was a collection project. So this is now Rhizome's collection. It contains more than 2,000 works, and in the beginning, it was also an open accessioning project. Like very radical people could just donate their work to the Art Base or say, like, this is okay, you can keep this, or you can link to it, and then by that declare themselves new media artists, which otherwise there was no mechanism for that at the time. So now it's a very curatorially controlled collection. But at that time, that helped get it jump-started. And so my job as the preservation director at Rhizome, which I'm at the organization for like 10 years now, is to keep this collection accessible throughout all the changes in software environments that we have seen in all of these years. And so, because of that, I'm not working like a classic new media art conservator, as you would say. So I'm not like looking at one particular artwork in detail and trying to reverse engineer it from the bottom and I don't know, re-implement it in a new language or something like that. But it's all about creating and also maintaining methods and systems that could recreate the environments, the software environments in which these works were originally meant to be seen.
And could you say the classic way of preservation is based off of like trad art? So the classic way of preserving a painting is like, many years in the lab. Of course, a painting wouldn't be recreated, but it's like very one-on-one, maybe? Or should we not use these parallels?
No, I think I always think it's interesting to reflect on the history of that of like digital art. And so I think exactly with the painting, the conservation methods have already reached a certain level where you can say things are reproducible. Mm-hmm. And with digital art in particular, what I'm working with, so within. Usually I don't say I'm a new media art conservator. I'm a software conservator, as an umbrella term for net art or artistic games or anything else that artists might do with computers. But the great thing about paintings or other things is that there are quite established ways how to do it and what is deemed acceptable when it comes to like changing something within the object that is preserved. And with digital art, there's still a lot of like soul seeking happening, I believe.
And so you mentioned you describe yourself as a software preservationist. So that gets us to this kind of abstract question: what is software?
Okay, I guess
I feel like you just started sweating.
Yeah, that's of course a fundamental question, and I mean, how I like to explain it, which also helps to explain how it can be preserved, is that when you buy a computer in the store, you're getting hardware, like a processor that is waiting for instructions to come from the software to tell the processor what to do. So, for instance, what unites all computers is that they're kind of having the same capabilities at different levels of performance, but in the end, they are all moving bits around, or they are inverting numbers, or they are manipulating symbols in some way in memory and on the very like bottom, so to say, of where things happening. And so you might have a string of like symbols, and they are moved from one part of memory to another part of memory, and that memory is video memory. And then you have some pixels appearing on screen. And all computers are the same in that way. So the software that is running on the computer is making the computer do stuff. And without software, the computer is useless. But software, on the other hand, is not so much dependent on a particular computer because computers are so similar. So if a computer is fast enough, it can like read the instructions that were written for a completely different system and then translate them in real time into instructions that this new system can understand and execute. And that all sounds, very orderly and logically well thought out by top minds of science. And in a way that's true, but how software is actually created is absolutely terrifying because you have like these processors that run microcode, and then there's an operating system on top, and that operating system has to deal with like, I don't know, Adobe PDF, whatever thing from 5 years ago that someone might want to run it. And so that operating system manages the interface with the hardware, but also how to draw windows on screen or buttons or whatever else. And then on top of that, there's some other software, maybe something like Unity that artists might want to use to create some 3D environment. And then on top of that, there are some plugins and so forth. And then finally, somewhere there is like the thing that you would consider that makes the difference, that is then can be called an artwork. But the whole stack below it is just as important.
Yeah, and that explains why at some point earlier today you had to run home and get a different computer just to run this simple Zoom. It's like a perfect example of what you just described. That so real quick, I think probably a lot of people at home might never have heard of this idea of like a digital preservationist. How did you? Before we get into the actual Majerus computer, how did this happen? How did you end up with this wild job?
Yeah, so I guess the job is not so wild anymore. You can actually now, you can study this in different places, and you can do it from a library in information science like angle and go into it, or from art conservation. And but yeah, I didn't do that. So I mean, we know each other from from being musicians, and I was
Yeah,
I
I
was
can
like
actually
in this.
jump in here. You were and are in my all-time favorite band. Were the band no longer? I don't know if you're. It hasn't been active in a while. Bodenständig 2000. So yeah, we first met in the we met in 2001 literally, but
Mhm.
I listened to your record in 99 in college. 100% remember getting the record in the mail and even seeing it spinning on the turntable and thinking, what is this?
Yeah, so this band Bodenständig 2000, which I have with my friend Bernhard Kirsch, we were thinking of ourselves as folk musicians for the home computer age, and we're trying to look in what do home computers that at that time were already considered obsolete, what is specifically interesting about them? How do they work? How are they not trying to imitate when you're making music with them, like another instrument that existed before them? So we used a lot this like software that was produced by communities of enthusiasts, and that was just available for download somewhere. And yeah, so that culture was very interesting to us, and also that particular sound of home computers that we try to work with as good as possible. And yeah, so I guess the connection here is also that you wrote a lot of tunes for like legacy computer systems, and made it work inside of the original hardware and all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always interested in that, like there is something that hasn't been fully explored in these old systems. They have been declared obsolete before their prime, so to say. And
Yeah,
so
that's
that,
a great way to put it, before their prime. They haven't been
yeah,
really utilized completely.
yeah. Or like also when you think about systems that are constantly changing and changing incredibly fast, it's very difficult to get some proficiency with it, or like artistry. So this is yeah, at least that was my position at the time. So,
Yeah.
and
And and I'll just add to the audience at home, when you performed live, this was communicated through music. It was communicated not through like an essay it was really communicated through live. It was like it's so hard to explain, but I saw you many different places, and there was it was almost euphoric or something, the way that you and Bernard communicated this, what you're just explaining live. It was
thank you.
it was unbelievable, actually.
Yeah, and then the next step in that direction, I would say, was that I started to work with the net art pioneer Olia Lialina, who in 1996 started to define what art on the internet can be. And when we teamed up, it was also that she was at that moment very interested in around the turn of the century, when it was observable that a lot of existing user culture or amateur culture on the web was erased. And she was kind of building artistic monuments to that culture. And we did a few projects together in that direction, but I guess the one that made the biggest impact overall is the 1 TB of Kilobyte Age project that works with the GeoCities data that was rescued by the archive team in 2008, just before Yahoo deleted all of GeoCities in 2008. And we have been restoring these hundreds of thousands of amateur productions and showed them in their original software environment in which they were created and in which they were meant to be seen. So it is radically different if you look at a website that was made in, or last updated rather, in 1997, and you look at it in Chrome version 2000 or whatever, what we have right now. That is just completely different. And so for us, it was interesting in what environment did these people work? How did this all come together? it's not something to be belittled, but it's really what the people were able to do at that time and which they taught themselves. And I guess that project also was very instrumental in landing me my job at Rhizome like 10 years ago.
And so so it's interesting. You start as a musician, and then there is a kind of relation. You have this you there is a you have this interest in computers and their potential, and this in opposition to the kind of obsolescence curve of the technology, but also the cultural, like GeoCities was considered culturally obsolescent quite quickly. And it wasn't necessarily technologically obsolescent, although you mentioned it wouldn't show up the same way. I always like to think, like, since screens got so many more pixels, everything gets a lot smaller. Like all these things from the 90s show up so tiny now in browsers, and it would be as if a sculpture made by an artist would just shrink every year.
Yeah, or it gets blown up and gets blurry.
Exactly.
It's just very distorting. And yeah, it's true that like obsolescence is kind of a construct, because there are ways to make stuff run again and look as it used to look. It's just not something that is available. Like broadly.
And so that brings us to this project. So tell us about, like, how does this project work technically? We have maybe, I talked a little bit about it in episode 1, but it might be fun for you to kind of reiterate a little bit. And then talk, like, so there are things that I don't know, like what is, like, emulation as a service, and what's happening in this project, and what was the process like to get this thing running again? I mean, that's a lot to answer, but
I'll try to be brief. There is as much as I can, but so in general, the idea to make the software on that laptop work again is you would do that with an emulator. And an emulator is exactly such a program that would translate the instructions for one system to the system it's running on, and also like taking into account the operating system that emulator is running on. So a thing that can be done is you take the storage device of a computer in a laptop, or in that particular laptop, it was a little hard drive, and you make an image of that drive. That means you copy it bit by bit without any semantics. You just make one like gigantic file that is that complete hard disk, and you don't care what's on it. And then you point that emulator to that and say, this is your hard disk. And the emulator will then, any hard disk commands that will go its way, it will translate it into actually read from this file. And then if everything goes well, the old system will boot up again. And this is also, what you have been shown beautifully in your videos, because you didn't skip the boot process, which I really appreciate.
In episode 1. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you can see like how all the things are, all the system control panels and extensions are loading over time.
Yeah, and for those who remember OS 9, those were stressful. Each extension was, because often what would happen when you would really get a muscular computer with a lot of extensions, add-ons, is it would load extension, freeze. So it was a very tense moment. OS 9 is notoriously finicky and crashable.
And that's also an interesting point about emulators, because emulators will never be perfectly emulating an old system, because if they would be, first of all, incredibly slow, and also many things about the systems are not known or don't make sense really to actually emulate one by one. So this was also the case with that disk image. When it booted up the first time, it was exactly crashing because what was it? Norton Disk Utilities was saying, hey, this is not the same hard disk that I've seen last time. There's something wrong, and it would crash. And I mean, Norton wasn't wrong, but it wasn't
like
helping.
Running like a checksum or something, or just yeah, who knows?
No, not really clear. It crashed before it could say what it
Wow.
didn't like. And so before this disk image would boot actually up, it would be manipulated so that this Norton thing would not boot up. And after that, it seemed to be quite fine. Some sound devices had to be exchanged so that the actual sounds would come out of the emulator as well. And this sounds like a very straightforward process. But
Yeah, it
again,
sounds easy, Dragan. This
yeah,
sounds like a breeze.
but yeah, this is usually the issues with that approach come from like these differences in between emulator and real hardware. So there were many other things that needed to be poked around with. For instance, there were some specific partitions on that disk that were that would just make sense on actual hardware, that would have like firmware things on it and so forth. And the emulator didn't know what to do with that. That's also talking about this emulator, which is called Sheep Shaver, which is also something that comes out of the Mac enthusiast community. It's a very rough emulator, so
okay.
it is not too detailed in how it handles things, how it handles CDs, for instance. It doesn't really work well with audio CDs. Okay. It works well with data CDs, and all of these tiny things. And once that's done, you can use that. You can use that disk. You can use the system exactly as it was the last time it was started up.
And the system that Sheep Shaver is running in is called emulation as a service. Yeah. So what is that?
There are several reasons why this system is needed. So in our case, first of all, you want to look into what's on that computer, but while you're just looking, you are changing everything.
Mm-hmm. Oh, like that's how the operating system functions. As you look, okay.
Yeah. So for instance, you open a window with files in it, and then you scroll down. So the operating system will remember where you scroll down when you open that window next time, or when you're looking at control panels, and you want to go to the bottom control panel to turn on the sound or something. You need to scroll down. All of this will be remembered. And that seems like, okay, well, whatever. But as you have also shown in your series, you can get a lot of very interesting information out of that. For instance, also like last used programs, last accessed files. All of these things will change once you start messing with the system. Or just not even messing, just browsing around. Wow. And so what emulation as a service does, and this is what we did here, it makes like a layer for each session. So the disk itself is the ground layer. That's the disk that has been extracted from the laptop. And then it only writes per session the changes, the changes with regard to that base layer. And if you are done with the session, you can like revert, or you can completely discard your session and go exactly to the original state again.
And this is so in my case, I've just been discarding every session. So every time the laptop starts up, it is kind of as if I've never seen it again. So for those at home, that's what I've been doing. And I've even been terrified even to save a session, because I'm like,
it's all reversible. And
yeah.
It's almost like if you have ever worked with Git or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It works like that. So you can also branch different versions. Yeah. But of course, you also want to always then be sure to say, okay, this is the version that we got. This is the version where the Norton disk utility has been disabled.
Right.
This is,
And then there was a version that had been, your colleague Mona Ulrich had worked with the family to kind of redact personal material. So so I have a version downstream from that, basically. Yes. Who makes emulation as a service? Like, who does? Is it can you buy it, or I mean,
emulation as a service is an open software framework that was originally developed at the University of Freiburg as a digital preservation project. It was led by Klaus Rechert, And what is great about it is that there are many, virtual machine tools and whatever stuff, but it was really developed from the ground up, also with a team that I'm still working with, and also with Klaus, of course, where preservation and considerations, like I just said, were foundational for the design of the system. So while it has, of course, its quirks and everything, but conceptually it's the way how you can work with software. That's all baked into it. So you can do all kinds of other things with it. For instance, you can install software on a computer, on like one of these computers from a library, which is also then as little disk images that you can then insert into that running computer, and the system will record, okay, this software has been installed here, and then okay, have a system where that software is installed, a system where another software is installed, and so forth.
And I think, keep going.
So this is used by a bunch of libraries and some research projects, and Rhizome, we have been like the organization that has put it like on the public internet. So we can, that's also a great thing about emulation as a service. It runs on a cloud computer. That's how we set it up for us, so that both Mona Ulrich for redaction, both you for like your YouTube series and interpretation, and the estate, everyone can access the same system just through a browser, and we all can work on it together. So that's also a great part of it, and that makes it also possible for Rhizome to present all kinds of art with it online. Not with this one, of course, because the material is very sensitive, of course.
And actually, real quick, why don't computers have a thing? Why don't computers run the same way, where it would just to like, you could be like, oh, I want to uninstall this program, and the computer would take care of that. I mean, anyway, whatever.
It kind of works like that already under the hood with, I think with Windows 10, they started having such reversible. You could have a snapshot of the operating system, but I mean, Windows being Windows, of course, it doesn't help much.
Right. And so this project, like, put it into historical context for us. What were some other kind of predecessors to this project in terms of having a kind of closed system and kind of bringing it to life again?
I think in the last episode you were playing with MAME.
Yes.
And I guess MAME is maybe one of the most popular emulation frameworks that uses different emulators depending on what you want to run. I mean, it's very focused on games and old home computers, but you can also get like user interfaces for it, where you have your collection of, I don't know, every variation of Space Invaders that was ever released, and depending on what you want to do, it launches different emulators. This is also what emulation as a service does, kind of. Or, I mean, where I see similarities. There was also a project called the Olive Project, which came out of the Carnegie Mellon University. And their idea was that you would transfer the emulator over the internet onto somebody's computer and download the whole disk image and run it on someone's computer. And that is, of course, not great if you have to work with redacted disk images, for instance, because even Mona deleted all the things that were supposed not to be seen publicly or even by you. It only means that the record is removed from the disk, but the data is still around. And if you are like a forensic specialist, you can still go in there. So that's one thing where it would have not been a good fit, for instance. And
because of the architecture, because it kind of delivers everything over.
Yes.
And so what you were saying, it's interesting. So what's special about emulation as a service was really made by conservationists thinking like, what are our needs?
Yes.
That's really, and then, so for example, MAME people are like, what are our needs? Our needs is every version of this game,
Yeah.
right? So
Yes. Yeah.
I never, it's really interesting. To quickly talk about um, like the environment. Like I can't really explain it so well in my words, but what is special about this preserving the whole thing as opposed to like some files, like in terms of
Mhm.
conservation theory, like why bother?
Oh yeah. So I think this is also why I really love this project so much that you have been putting together, is that you can read a lot of things out of a software environment. And for instance, there was this one episode where you launched up Photoshop, and then the Photoshop palettes are all moving to a certain place. And and if you know how Photoshop works or how to use Photoshop, you can say, okay, this is someone who wanted to make space
Yeah,
on the screen so that the whole picture is visible. So no toolbars and everything. And I mean, I wasn't like licensed to go into the computer very deep. I was just asked to make it boot up. But the first time you see it boot up, you see like what an I don't know how to say, what a determination to changing the environment the user, yeah, Michel Majerus had, because basically everything is changed in that system.
yeah.
There's like the very elegant system font has been replaced with some like funky handwritten felt pen type of system
Yeah.
font, and the colors are all changed around. So sometimes I have a color vision impairment, and sometimes I can't even see if text is selected or not because of
Yeah.
the uh, the and also the position of icons on screen, and sometimes how these icons have been changed, is something that this old operating system would save in the file system.
Mhm.
And if you just take the data out of it, you are losing this information as well. Like, where was it standing? When you double click a folder on this computer, the window will pop up exactly at that position on screen where it used to pop up last time. And if you just take like the data out and not all of this environment, you're losing quite a lot of things. You're getting something like a final product, or something that looks like a final product, but isn't at all. It's all in process
Yeah.
on that system. Some things might have been declared final products that you have shown. It's like that TIFF, that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
But but especially with Majerus, where the computer was kind of the sketchboard, and then he would execute a painting. This is a completely different relationship to data. So you can see how people worked and how they inscribe their way of working into their tools in a way, which I think is incredibly exciting, and which I believe this is how digital art history needs to be approached in general.
Yeah, and there's something like maybe unquantifiable about all of those things that you just mentioned. So, like, it would be very hard to communicate it any other way. Like you have to see it and you have to feel it. So when the computer boots up, or like when you open up Photoshop, like you said, all those things you just mentioned, those are felt by people who know Photoshop and who
Yeah,
understand those computers. And then in a way, we're no longer really in the realm of science, or we're then like in the realm of like beings, or poetics or something, right? So you're in the realm of magic then, because it's like it's feel like, oh, this is how he wanted the computer to feel, right? Like it's kind of amazing. I mean, that's how I interpret it. It becomes unspreadsheetable in a way.
I like that. I like that phrase, unspreadsheetable, because when you think about data, or how also computer interfaces have changed over time, everything is going much more in the direction of data or spreadsheetable
Yeah.
things. Whereas when you look at a system like Mac OS 9, which was an absolute mess, I
Yeah.
mean, but that messiness allowed for a lot of expressivity, and a lot of the data is of course represented as data, but it's ambiguous in a way. So you can't say or order by distance of icon from each other, or so it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And when you look how most people use their computer today, for instance, they would in a window with files, they would use the list view because you just have so much more files today.
Yeah.
The disks have become so large, and you want to like order by date, order alphabetically or something like that. Versus with these systems, they would encourage you to order whatever you would think is the best order. You would actually have to tell that system, please order alphabetically, and then maybe you can show that next time. Then the icons would zip around and put themselves in the grid.
It's funny.
So all of these things, are very specific to that particular software environment.
Yeah, it's funny. This summer, there was a huge yacht that showed up in the port of Stavanger. And of course, I'm very much interested in these yachts that come here. And it was the software engineer behind Excel.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just a bit of an anecdote. This has been amazing. I don't know. Is there anything that you want to add? I mean, thank you. So again, this project, why I wanted to have you as a whole episode is this project was really a lot of your lifting, and this magic, this computer magic, and was really a lot of your doing and the team at Rhizome. So thanks.
Yeah, and the team at EaaS and emulation as a service.
Yeah.
And I also think that, what I also want to say about your project overall, which has been, you've asked me how many years ago, if we can do this together. I think also
I think it was 8 years ago.
8 years now. Holy. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you can also imagine that, and that is, I guess, where software conservation is going, like integrating it into some kind of institutional thing like this estate is also a lot of the work.
Yeah.
Like explaining these potentials and making them also like tangible. Just like you said, you kind of have to see it to understand what's the value. And I also think that the knowledge about, let's say, we have been talking about Photoshop or MAME or something like that, that this knowledge needs to stay available. And this series that you're making is, of course, incredible for that, because what are you going to do as a preservation specialist that is, I don't know, just now coming out of university or something, has never in their life seen this old operating system, doesn't have all these intuitions about it. Oh yeah, I need to click here, I need to click there, and this means that, and so forth. So keeping that knowledge around is super important, so that, with all the great things that can be done with emulation, that there's also a way to interpret it, that we can actually come to the right conclusions. And I felt like this video series is doing exactly that in a very accessible way. And that is also different from, I don't know, Let's Play Bubble Bobble or
Minecraft, Roblox.
Or whatever, because you're exactly targeting these knowledge gaps that maybe you don't even think are knowledge gaps, but they are, or they will become knowledge gaps pretty soon. So so that's part of not only preserving Majerus's work here, but also preserving the knowledge about how to interpret computer systems like that, because I believe we will have more of them around, and we will need to understand how people were using them.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. Well, thank you both for that and for the project, Dragan. Thanks for being on. We have one more episode coming. I won't give the spoiler. Dragan knows what it's going to be, but so episode 5 is coming soon. Yeah, thanks again, Dragan. It's been a real pleasure, and for all your other projects as well over what is now going to be 30 years soon. So,
Corey, all best, and if you ever need some emulation done, just
I know who to write.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, everybody. That's what we got for you today. Thanks again. Please hit like. Please hit subscribe. One more episode coming at you. I'll put links to Bodenständig, 1 kilobyte of terabyte age. Am I getting 1 kilobyte of terabyte age?
No, the other way around.
One terabyte of kilobyte
yes,
age. Of course. I'll put links to those projects in the YouTube whatever, I don't know, space, which we'll have to explain YouTube to people in 20 years. I guarantee you.
Absolutely. More like in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks again, everybody. Later.
Yeah. See you.
Yay! We did it! Woo! That was great. That was perfect.
Super. So snappy.
Yeah, no, very quick. I mean, I probably still ran to about 40, but that's perfect. Oh, thanks, Dragan. That was great. I love it. It's perfect.
Thank you. I really like the unspreadsheetable idea. That's such a good way to explain it.
It's funny, though, because I didn't want to bring up that you were the person who originally got me interested in Excel. Because you said only 5 years ago, you were like, oh no, it's actually like one of the most elegant programs ever created. You know?
And that's a statement.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you didn't say that exactly, but you got me. Yeah. I think you said it was like top 10. And then
I think it's definitely one of the most powerful ones. And
it's crazy.
One of the,
yeah. So I recently wrote a composition in it. I used Excel to compose something I always wanted to do. I'd seen in the 90s a kid do it. And so I recently just started to get into it. And then I was like, oh my God, this is a crazy idea that there are these autonomous boxes that could talk to any other box. I mean, it's really, and they could be anywhere. Wicked.
And do you use the new? There's a Python interpreter now available. No.
I could barely do basic Excel because it just blew my mind. So, and then also when you move one of those boxes, Excel is smart enough to recalculate. I mean, it's.
Yeah, you wonder how they did it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, I saw the yacht, and when I saw the yacht, I was a little bit like, you know what? Fair enough.
You deserve it.
He deserves it. Like the other people that the yachts have come through, like some oligarchs, I'm like, no, I don't, iron ore, I don't buy it. But this one, I'm like, okay. Mm-hmm.
So interesting. Yeah, I had no idea this.
Yeah.
There's an Excel yacht.
Yeah, I forget. I'll send you his name. I forget. I'd never heard of him, but it was a massive, 100-meter yacht. All right, Dragan. It's so nice to hang out. I think we were blessed that we had all these errors. So
yeah, it was good practice.
Yeah. No, see, we need it, right? You could see how it works. Now we really pouted it. Okay, cool. I'm gonna stop recording. Stop recording.